Good morning. It's Monday of Holy Week, and our reading for today and the next 2 days, as we approach the Easter Triduum, all kind of at least have Judas Iscariot as one of the characters in the biblical accounts. So we'll have the Gospel of John today and tomorrow, and then the Gospel of Matthew, where Judas literally sells Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So let's these next couple days just take a look at Judas and see and understand how he got to where he got. Okay, and today's gospel passage from John chapter 12 gives us some good insight into the mindset of Judas. So we just, as the evangelist tells us, we just went through the raising of Lazarus, and now Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus is in Bethany with Lazarus and Martha and Mary. John tells us that Lazarus was just raised from the dead by Jesus. You think that in itself would lead to many conversions, but at least in the heart of Judas it didn't. Mary takes a liter of costly perfumed oil and anoints the feet of Jesus and dries them with her hair. And the house is filled with the fragrance of the oil, really making allusions to Jesus' soon-to-be burial. And if we know the story of Jesus' crucifixion, they kind of had to hurry and bury him before the Sabbath. It's kind of a very, very quick process. So one might assume from that they didn't have time to do the anointings and so forth. So they just, not like, as we know, not as if Jesus will need it, but since he will be raised from the dead in 3 days. But still, Mary, in a gesture of love, probably not knowing what it is that she's doing. We don't know why, and the inside is why he decides to do it, but Jesus sees it as a message of prophecy. She's preparing him for his burial. But Judas is so hung up on money, right? So we talked about this in my 7 deadly sins study on the sin of avarice, also known as greed. All Judas can think about is the money. And he gives this kind of false piety expression. Why wasn't this oil sold for 300 days' wages and given to the poor? And John tells us he really doesn't care about the poor, but that he was a thief and used to steal from the money contributions. So that sin of greed really consumed Judas. I'm sure there's many other things in his life, pride and so forth. But greed is the motivating factor. And as I said, with the sin of greed, it's easy to fix. All we have to do is just acquire less, be willing to give a little bit more. Judas could have prevented this whole thing if he just stopped stealing. If he just wasn't so consumed with money. Sitting and contemplating the words of Jesus, contemplating the fact that he's in the presence of a man that Jesus just rose from the dead. It's an easy fix, but if you don't fix it, as we're going to see on Wednesday, it's going to lead to some very destructive behavior. And so greed, at least one, if not the main motivating factor of the life of Judas. And so it's a good examination of our conscience with how much do we desire worldly pleasures? How much when we don't acquire worldly pleasures, are we angry or sad about it? So again, it leads into those those deadly sins of anger and sadness when we don't have those things because of worldly pleasures. We don't have worldly pleasures, so we're angry or we're sad about it. It robs us of our spiritual life, robs us of our relationship with Jesus. And if it's not remedied, it could lead to more destructive patterns, at least in our life of faith. Maybe we're not selling Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, but we pray less. Our use of the sacraments is less. We don't go to confession as much. we start to lose our faith little by little. So the sin of avarice, the first step in Judas's life. And tomorrow we'll actually head to the Last Supper, where Jesus announces that one of the people will betray him, and we'll take some more insight into that. God bless you, and enjoy your Holy Week.